I thought it was very revealing in the debate and in the leaders' questions earlier how the question of the conflict of interest facing landlords in this Dáil exercised the establishment party so much. Why is that? Because it exposes, in my opinion, the naked interest, which is not just a question of personal interest, but a question of class interest that lies behind the government's policies which are supported by Fianna Fáil on the housing crisis. And the answers of those who say that's ridiculous, that we'd call on landlord TDs not to vote on this bill, are actually extremely revealing, because they say, oh, it's just the same as you voting on taxation, you are taxpayers. And in reality, the defence that they're hiding behind in the Code of Conduct is 5.2, which says a conflict of interest does not exist where the member or other person benefits only as a member of the general public or a broad class of persons. And so the defence of those who say there is no conflict of interest that excludes us here says there's no conflict of interest because we're part of a broad class of persons, i.e. the landlord class. We agree. You are part of the landlord class. You represent the landlord class. Even those amongst you who don't own properties represent the landlord class, and you do so through the policies that you pursue and through the neoliberal ideology that you defend. It was exposed extremely well in Minister Murphy's statement earlier, where he spoke about not interfering too much. He didn't say exactly what we weren't meant to interfere too much in, but it was clear what he was talking about not interfering with was the capitalist market. The free market which allows wealth to flood upwards to the landlords, to the bosses, to the bankers, rather than supposedly trickling down to ordinary people. The free market which in the property market has allowed rents to increase by 30% since this government came to power, which has allowed the amount of wealth that is going to landlords in this country on a yearly basis to double over the past 6 or 7 years. It was added to by a new sense, which again I think is something to do with the free market, which is the idea that we're a young rental market, that we would like to be a mature rental market where we can all have all these kind of decent tenancy protections and rights, but we're on a journey to a mature rental sector, and that's going to take a while, and we can't kind of preempt that with any legislation that would say, well, tenants actually have significant rights. Well, I'd say go and tell that. Speak about the journey to a mature rental sector to the children living in 539 North Circular Road. You have a choice tomorrow to defend those children, to defend others facing eviction, or you have a choice to allow the market and the landlords, and the big corporate landlords in particular, to continue to ride roughshod over their rights. I have a termination notice here, which, for my opinion, sums up just how bad the crisis has got. It's a termination notice for the 21st of December, 4 days before Christmas, and it's a termination notice for someone who is currently in transitional housing from homelessness in Tala Cross. Their 18 months of transitional housing is up. They aren't able to find any alternative accommodation, and therefore formally they've been given notice to quit. It's a sign of how horrific the crisis is when homeless people themselves are being evicted or threatened with eviction back into homelessness. The Minister has said that they won't be carried out, they won't be evicted, but they are awaiting written confirmation from TUA and from the government that that is the case and that they won't be evicted. They've gotten organised, they're prepared to resist any attempt to evict. I met with a whole number of them on Monday, and that's exactly what we need, because we have to face the reality. There's no convincing you. 1/4 of you are landlords, you all represent the landlord class. You're not going to pass legislation which significantly interferes with their right to profit, and the only conclusion is therefore that we need a movement. You see what's happening in terms of the yellow vests in France, a revolt from below of the oppressed against the president of the rich, Macron, forcing him back, forcing concessions from him already, but which are absolutely inadequate, which are rightly seen by people as being crumbs, and the movement continues and has the potential to force Macron out. We need a movement like the Yellow Vests here on the issue of housing, with young people and students to the fore. We've raised the idea of a national student strike, of occupations of campuses, raising the struggle nationally on a higher plane. The question of regional and national demonstrations in the new year, and crucially, the role of the trade unions, not only in mobilising people and ICTU putting its full weight behind those demonstrations, but also in building for industrial action, perhaps starting with the idea of lunchtime action or half-day action, but moving and raising the idea of a one-day general strike on the issue of housing to bring this, to show to the government the power of working class people and to say we need action on the housing crisis.